Before we dive into corrective and combo shape creation, I wanted to address one thing from the last lesson, and that's how I get proxy eyebrow geometry to follow along without getting any scale issues. So here you see we have this proxy geometry, and if you raptiform this to the head, it'll follow the eyebrow deformation perfectly, but if you scale up, you'll start getting issues because the raptiformer doesn't handle scaling geometry following very well. So the thing I do is I actually have a bridge blend shape, which just means that all of my blend shapes, or at least the brow ones, are plugged into a separate piece of geometry that is then blend shaped into the global rig. So all the blend shapes go into one geometry, and then that geometry goes into this geometry here for the head. Now, these actual eyebrow geometry pieces right here, these are 100% weighted to head top so that they follow the head. But the only deformation is coming from a blend shape of these that is following that second bridge, remember? So we have that bridge over here of the head, and that's inheriting all of our blend shape based deformation, which includes all the eyebrow deformation. So when we raptiform duplicates of these to the head geometry off to the side that's inheriting all the deformation, and then blend shape into our global brows, they're going to inherit all that blend shape and then follow head top around, if that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, let me know in an email or a comment and I will go through it again in more detail. But for now, we're going to move on to creating, so where we left off, we have out and we have up. But when they combine together, they create this really nasty shape. If your limitations were maybe, say, out to here and just up to here, adding those together probably won't create a terrible shape. But if you want your rig to have really far limitations like this one does, you're going to have to create a combo shape in there or else it's just going to look gross. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up a plugin that I bought called Shapes. And this system allows us to very easily manage and create combination shapes and blend shapes in general. So if I select this geometry and hit select in shapes, by the way, you can get this at braverabbit.de. It's also where you can get an extract deltas plugin that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. So when I selected that, what it did is it went in and selected automatically the one blend shape node that this geometry has, and that's head base blend shape. And it lists all of our targets here. And if you click any of them, you can bring them up and down. Of course, that'll snap back because those are set driven keyed. That's what that means right there. Now, if we want to create a blend shape without worrying about duplicating it off and everything, with this selected over here, we can just hit enter sculpt mode, do whatever we want over here, and then click exit sculpt mode. And that created this new corrective for us here. It hit it, all that good stuff, plugged it in. You can rename it, all that kind of stuff. So for now, let's just delete that. So if we want to create a combo shape, the first thing that I'll do, and before I get into the details of what this is actually doing, let's just go for it and create the shape. Whoops. You know what? Let's actually go in and set limitations just so we don't end up doing anything with an overshot shape here. So this one was 9. So translate x 9, shoot that over, check. So we can't go past there. And up we stopped at 4. Okay, so now we're safe to just yank that around over here without it going past. Okay, so back over to shapes. We are going to put this in its up-out pose. Just yep, 9 and 4 there. Then we're going to just make a shape while it's in this pose. So I'll just hit enter sculpt mode. And while we're in here, you can make this look exactly how you want. We're not going to spend too much time worrying about that as usual, because that would be a waste of your time. But just make it exactly how your art direction says an up-out smile should look. So you're going to want to pull this up and all that. Maybe shrink that, give it a nice point there. Push this all up, and then pull this in. And smooth it out a little bit. Maybe flatten this a little bit since it's an up shape. All right, let's work with that. Exit sculpt mode. So if we zero out, oops, that is the cheek. There it is. If we zero that control out, right now, nothing happens when we go up into that corner. But you'll see we have this new corrective shape. I'll just call it L smile up, or mouth corner up out. And I'll call this combo target. So if we toggle this on without the out and the up active, you'll see it creates a very strange shape. And that's because all a blend shape does is send vertices from point A to point B in a very straight line, which means that this shape, when we already have the other two blend shapes active, is exactly what we need to make our new smile shape. So with that up and out, if we toggle this in and out, you'll see that is exactly what we want to happen. Now, the way it did that is it did something called extracting deltas. So it's essentially saying, when both these blend shapes are active, figure out what vertice movement needs to happen from the default pose to combine with those two to create a nice pose that we sculpted. And there are multiple tools out there to do that. Like I said, they have one at the Brave Rabbit website. If you just go to Google and search extract deltas, it'll probably be the first result. There's probably some other ones out there you can use too. It's very simple. You just, if you're not using shapes, which automatically does it for us, you pretty much just select your base shape, select your corrective, and it just extracts it out and gives you a shape that looks like that in this case. And then you can just manually plug that in. Now, to actually get this to activate when out and up are both active is actually incredibly simple. First, we're going to do it in shapes again, but then I'll show you it manually, which again is way, way, way more simple than you think it is. Let's just save, and okay. So in shapes, all we're going to do is select the two blend shapes that we want to combine together to equal this shape, which is out, up, and then lastly we'll select the combo. And then I'll just hit the middle button, which is create combo. And now you'll see perfectly, whenever we enter that pose, it perfectly forms it. So let's go to the channel box and check out the actual values of this. You'll see when this is all the way up and out, our corrective, which is yellow here, equals 1. Let's say this is halfway, it'll equal 0.5, or halfway over here, 0.5 in here, a little bit less, and it just, no matter what, it's going to perfectly equal the amount that you want. And that only works because these blend shapes are only going from 0 to 1. If you have your blend shapes go to, say, 2, then it's going to start exponentially adding in this corrective shape, and you don't want that. So it's very important to do this only for values that scale from 0 to 1. So if they're both at 1, it equals 1. If one of them's at 1 and another is at 0.5, it'll equal 0.5. If they're both at 0.5, I believe that's 0.25. My math is really bad, but you get the idea. And if it's 0, it's at 0. If both the drivers are at 0, it's at 0. So you probably figured out while I was talking about all that math that all you're really doing is blend shape 1 times blend shape 2 equals corrective, and that's it. So you can manually set that up, which I'll show you in a moment, by just creating an expression or a single multiply node that just says corrective shape that you've already created is equal to driver blend shape 1 times driver blend shape 2. So again, 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 0.5 is 0.5, etc. And 0 times 0 is obviously 0. And like I was saying, if you have, let's say your blend shape goes from 0 to 2, if you have your two drivers set to 2, that'll make your corrective be 4, which you don't want, and that's the number 4, to be space 4. So make sure your drivers are only going from 0 to 1. Now, if you do have a blend shape that goes past that, you could actually create a dummy value. You could just use a set-driven key that creates a value that says like dummy driver 1. And dummy driver 1 is equal to 0 when your blend shape is at 0, or when your, let's say even just the mouth corner translate X is at 0. then this equals to 0. Or when your mouth corner translate x is equal to 5, dummy value is equal to 1. So it's still a scale from 0 to 1, and you can use that to drive it. That may not have made sense since I'm not showing you it right now, but we're going to go do that with the jaw right now. And we're going to create this shape manually too. One of the most crucial and hard to get to look right shapes that you can make is mouth out, up with the jaw open. So up here, which is looking, I mean, it's kind of sloppy right now, but with some more fine tuning that would look fine. But then we also need one for when the jaw is open, because that's starting to look really, really gross. So what we're going to do, and you can create this dummy value anywhere, I'm just going to create it right on the jaw and hide it later. You're just going to add an attribute, leave it as float, this should be all the defaults, and I'm just going to call it jaw open cheat. Now I'm going to open setDrivenKey. I'm going to load my jaw as the driver and also as the driven. And I'm going to make rotate X, which is open and close. The driver and the driven be our attribute. Now when they're both at 0, set a key. And then when your jaw is pretty much the most open you're ever going to want it, make jaw open cheat 1 and set a key. So now, as this opens and closes within the values that you normally want it to, it's going to scale from 0 to 1. So we can now use that dummy value we created, jaw open cheat, as a driver for a combo. Now conveniently, you're not going to have to worry about combining 3 different shapes into this corrective. All you have to worry about, since we already have a free value here, is using this combo shape that we're already stealing from these two as one of your 2 variables. So you say out up combo times jaw open cheat equals a new corrective. Very, very simple. So let's go ahead and do that. For the sake of seeing it written out, let's just do it with an expression, but you can use a multiply divide node if you want, just in a multiply mode. Expression editor. By name, let's call this combos expr. And you can just add them all for different parts of the rig to this one expression. So we're just going to say head BS dot, or actually, you know, before we do this, we actually have to create the shape so we have something to write in here. So let's hit that pose that we had set. Probably should have taken note of the value that we had it set for. Just looking for that value over here to hit 1. There we go. And now we're going to take the corner up all the way. Get rid of Z. Now we're just going to duplicate this off. Let's just do it without shapes for the sake of usability for those who don't have it. Move this out. We can go ahead and 0 these. Okay, now we're going to sculpt this to look exactly how we want. In most cases, I find that you're going to want to push the outer corner up a lot more than it likes to be for this shape, so that it stays up there when the jaw goes open as the smile is up there. Maybe pull this whole area in more. Already that's looking way better. Let's just go with that for demonstration. At this point you'd want to use extract deltas here, so actually should have used this in a shape since I haven't been actually using extract deltas. I don't have that installed right now. So I'm actually going to do a trick here. I'm going to keep this guy unparented and just take note of where he is here. And I'm actually going to enter sculpt mode to create a new sculpt and just blend shape this guy in. But if you were on your own, just using extract deltas would have been fine. This is just a cheat I'm doing since I don't have extract deltas installed. Make sure that worked. Got new corrective. Whoops, I actually created that without putting it in the pose first. I'm actually going to set a key on this so I can zero it out easily. Okay, now if I enter sculpt mode and plug this in, exit, there we go. That's what we want. So I'll call this L, mouth, corner, up, out, jaw, TGT. So now I'm gonna manually plug this in with the expression editor that we left open, although I've actually closed it at this point. Okay, remember this was going to be combos expr. And now we're just going to say, let's check out what this is labeled as. By the way, we can delete this now. This is going to be head BS dot L mouth corner up out jaw TGT is equal to head base BS dot L mouth corner up out TGT times our jaw cheat value, which was called jaw bind con dot jaw open cheat semicolon. If it's one line, I don't think you need a semicolon, but if you add more lines, you probably do. Let's hit create, see if this worked. Okay, so everything's at 0, looks good. Open the jaw, still good. Bring this up, still good. But then if we combine them together, perfect. I mean, obviously you're gonna want to fine tune the shape so it doesn't drift like that, but it is activating correctly and it looks like everything is exactly as we intended. So now whenever you go up and out and have your jaw open at the same time, your shape will activate. And again, you can do that with a multiply divide node if you want as well, which might be even simpler. So that is how to create combos. You can do this with the brows, you can do this with any mouth direction. And that's pretty much everything I have to teach you. So let's hop over to the finished Kayla rig just to go over some, just for a quick recap on all the different aspects of the facial rig that we've gone through. So the first thing we went through on Kayla was setting up her global rig. That included some base joints such as her head top, head bottom, as well as her jaw. And while all this is going on, we set up her local rigs, which involves stuff such as lip deformation. We set up her lid control, which included lid creases. And then you have standard blend shapes driving her brows, as well as her mouth corners. And while all this is happening, we are also paying attention to how various combination shapes are activating depending on what's going on. So for instance, jaw open, up, out. And that's pretty much all there is to my facial rigs. We didn't go through setting up eye aims. That's pretty standard. You can find free tutorials for that pretty much anywhere you look. And some other aspects of her face that aren't really worth tutorial time are just some standard blend shapes that go in and out from 0 to 1, set driven keyed to some other value. So for suck puff, you go negative, it activates that blend shape. You go positive, it activates that blend shape. Same with upper lip puff and such. And again, inside the mouth, it's just standard FK joint chains. I just have one for each upper teeth and lower teeth, and then just an FK chain for the tongue. And yeah, I think that's about it. So that's it for this series. I may add some free videos into it later on for people who have already bought it. If I get a lot of requests for specific areas, definitely feel free to email me or comment any questions, and if there are a lot of them, I'll create videos for them. And if not, I'll just respond to you and help you out. Thanks for the business. Thanks for buying this. If there's enough demand, maybe I'll make some more in the future. Until then, later.